Well, hello and welcome to Pick Up the Mic, Harvest Church's only official podcast. You know, I listened to a recent podcast and I said only official website. There's no quick correct on this. When there's an audience, somebody looks at you funny and goes, you said it wrong. So you can do that. But
I just autocorrect in my brain and assume other people do too.
so I'm Mike Granite, this is Will Land, and he is now the autocorrect in your brain. We are here and excited to be here because we're starting to I hate to say it's kind of sad, but it's kind of happy. We're preparing for life after the cruiser. He's not dead or nothing, but he's so busy filling up life. And by the way, ladies, he's still an eligible bachelor.
And filling up life in good ways.
Employment, education, future employment. And he's one handsome devil.
He might even be going to the gym or something.
That's why he's named after Tom Cruise. That's where we got that name. He's like Tom. Yeah.
Yeah, young Tom Cruise.
You can just see him on a motorcycle right now, riding, and those cool glasses through the desert and getting ready to fly a jet.
I just watched that movie, man.
Yeah, and you thought of him, didn't you?
I thought of him
right away. So, ladies, please get your applications in, and we're still looking for someone to marry this poor sap. But he's not a sap. We love him. But he's not around. So El Guapo, the big boss, has had to come in, and he is training our very own Sunshine Baby, who we think is running fast. But she has brought in the silent storm, the quiet storm. We're just going to call her Stormy because that's who she is. And
I like it. It fits.
I know. And if you saw the two of them
see
together,
it in her eyeballs.
Sunshine is blonde and always smiling and perky, but then the other, she is a silent, quiet storm. Deep beneath the surface of her limpid ponds or eyeballs is a storm coming up. So anyway, we have 3 producers today.
Yeah.
We're producing the crap out of
That
this
is
show.
how bad we are. We need 3 people to make us halfway listenable.
Are you guys mic'd today?
Yes, we sure are.
Oh, I want to hear Sunshine talk to me. I don't think she's been on a podcast yet. Are you mic'd today?
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you available are you an available bachelorette?
Nope.
Nope. Somebody asked you, huh?
Nope. Yep. Freshly
Okay.
engaged.
Okay, but guys, listen. It's a competition until they hit the altar. So,
So my dad always said.
yeah. It ain't over till it's over. It ain't over till the fat lady sings, they say. And that's an opera.
I would always say, but she's got a boyfriend. And he's like,
So?
Who cares? What's
So?
a boyfriend?
So that was always my attitude. Then I got saved. Well, I got to knock that off because
Nah.
no, it was good to knock it off. It causes more trouble than you think when you dating other guys' girlfriends is not the trouble. It's when you date more than one girl.
Well, yeah, that's true.
They get mad.
I would say, but if the one you're after
Is one of them?
is dumb and dating some other schmuck,
Oh, yeah, you
then
go for that.
Go for it.
Go for that. And he could be a great guy, but since
But
he's
he's
with
not
her,
you.
that makes him a schmuck.
Right, yeah.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
So we got a couple of great bachelorettes here. Because
not
neither
really.
of them, no, they are. They're
Neither are married.
neither are married, so they're fair game. Okay, let's get rolling. We dark and stormy, if you like that, you like the mystery, or if you need some sunshine in your life. Hey, you can yell at me. You have the microphone. You can push back. You
You
can.
could just cut all this out too.
No, you can cut it out. You're the producer.
It's like the first time I've actually been mic'd, so I gotta get.
Yeah. See. Well, okay. Let's jump in. Here's the part I want to think about for a minute. From we had a sermon that Jesus said he had no place to lay his head.
Did you preach this anywhere?
Yeah, I did 2 times.
Because I
PBC.
heard. Okay.
I didn't hear
know.
Isaac's yet.
Yeah, I only heard Isaac's.
His is probably different than mine, but I'm fascinated by the idea that we are strangers and aliens. The way it's written in Hebrews, we are strangers and exiles on the earth. I just love that picture. We are strangers and exiles on the earth. What do you think of that? Strangers and exiles. What's an exile?
Cast out of society. You're
Yeah.
forcibly against your will removed.
It's normally against your will. That's right. It is done by the team kicks you off, but it can also be something you're happy. Like if you get kicked out of North Korea, I don't think you're whining.
Well, yeah.
Crimes against the state. Sure. See ya.
Well, that's true. I'm not sure that happens often. Most bad places you want to get
They'll
out of,
just
they
kill
put
you.
you in jail and keep you
They
there.
just kill you. Well, if they say if you come back, we're going to kill you. So that makes you an exile too.
Yeah, that makes you an exile too.
So
it's like the TV show Survivor. You got voted off the island.
that's such a. I'm so tired of that show. My kids love that show. They watch old seasons.
They're on like the 27th season or something.
I know. I like some of it, but it's turned into really good-looking people doing puzzles in the sand, where it used to be regular people who were fat and got skinny and survived.
And they had to like get a pound of rice.
These are great-looking people in their regular clothes. They strip down to their underwear. They're like, I look great, and I'm going to run in the sand and do a puzzle. And then this dude comes out like he's Jungle Man, and he's not Jungle Man, and talks to him forever. And it's so dumb.
Anyway, exile. We're exiles on the planet. How does it make me feel?
Yeah, why are you in exile?
It's weird. I get convicted. Are you talking about me, or are we talking the royal you? Like
Both. You were going somewhere. You said you get convicted. Listen, if you had to explain to a group of people who were foreign to Christianity, and they said, we heard that, and they would probably say it with some sort of an accent because they're foreign. We have heard that you are called exiles. Why is this? This is very strange, my friend. How can we be exiles? You are still Christian. You're still American. I do not see why you are exile.
yeah.
You're not kicked off the world. You're not in space.
The textbook answer, the textbook being the Bible, is that this isn't your home. It's not your ultimate home. It's not where you're going to find satisfaction ever, like eternal, like
So wait a
ultimate
minute.
satisfaction. So it's not where we look for
That's not
satisfaction.
strong enough for me. Because that's just
And
religion. All you're telling me is heaven's better than earth. That can't be it. There's got to be more to it.
Well, it also
Everyone
ties
knows
in.
heaven's better than earth in all religious concepts.
What also ties into you're not going to be accepted by the world once you join Team Jesus.
Who's the world? That's a troublesome one. Because the Bible says if you you can't love the world and love God, right?
Yeah.
But it also says God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. So God loves the world, but we don't? How does that work?
Yeah, this is weird. And so when I hear the world used in the first verse referenced, so you can't love the world. It's like they use a phrase, writers of the Bible use the spirit of the world in other places too. It's this
Zeitgeist.
Yeah, it's what's the world after. It's what's the
Zeitgeist.
culture of the world. What is the world worshiping?
Sunshine, do you know the word zeitgeist? Have you ever heard it? Some people will say Zeitgeist because I think that sounds good. Zeitgeist.
Yeah.
But it's German. Mm-hmm. Germans have a very strange militant language. They always sound like they're mad at you. You know, I like
romantic. No, it's
I
not
like
romantic.
listening to Spanish. French is fun to play with. I think French is a comedy language. It's supposed to be pretty, but it always makes you laugh. Right? You know, you're like choking on words, but the
German's
Germans,
kind of angry.
yeah, how does a German tell a joke? Stillander. You're like, he really sounds angry at me.
Anyway, so what does zeitgeist mean?
Let's get back to this. Zeitgeist, spirit of the world. It is the way the world thinks in general. It's a neutral term. It's a neutral term. Like everyone in our country thinks it's okay for men to call themselves women and use the girls' room. That's the zeitgeist.
Yeah, and it's transient because it's always contemporary. There's like what is the zeitgeist now versus back then?
That's
it's
right.
Like, what
You're
is
born
the current?
gay is the zeitgeist.
Yeah.
And here we are, Christians, going, no, that's a pathology. Well, we can get in trouble for saying that. You know what a pathology means?
Yes.
Well, I'm asking you because you're top shelf, so you'll define it for everybody else. I know what it is.
It's
Did I throw you a curveball? You don't know the definition of pathology, do
Well,
you?
I'm wondering if I actually do know it, or if I just know it by contact. Because so
Okay.
often you think you know, but
then you
it's
don't.
like, have I ever actually read this in the dictionary? Well, I know the two root words, and then I would say that a pathology is
That's how you're too smart. When you know the root words, but you don't know what the word means.
Well, that helps you.
I know what a cup is. I know what a board is. Just don't know what a cupboard is.
A pathology is an illness of the mind.
That's right. That's exactly right. It's a malady in your brain, and it causes you to.
But pathos is feeling.
It's not one of the three musketeers.
No.
Okay. Pathos, ethos, and ego.
Yes, and logos. Yeah, pathos is feeling.
So, yeah. So, I don't know how I got us here.
Let's go back.
Let's
we
go
were talking about the
backwards.
spirit of the age.
One step at a time. One step at a time. So we were talking about the spirit of the age, zeitgeist, and I said being homosexuality is a pathology, which is against the zeitgeist.
It's against the zeitgeist. Part of the zeitgeist is that it's A-OK to be LGBT or Q.
Right. So what you're saying is, when I asked you, it says you can't love this world and love God. You're saying that in that case, the word world is really the spiritual zeitgeist, if we can add an adjectives to that. It's
Yes.
And what is the spirit origin of the zeitgeist?
It ties right into fearing men over fearing God. Like the Bible says all over the place that following the Lord is going to put you in opposition to the moral alignment of the world.
And the world can be close. What was it? I think it was Chesterton who said that the atheist mind does not get rid of Christian morality. He just warps it. Right? It warps it. Once you cut yourself free of God, you're still a moralistic being. So, and I think that explains animal rights, by the way.
Well, that's why people are still mad at you for disobeying the zeitgeist, is because they still have a moral framework and they want you to act morally. They just have warped their moral framework.
That's a good point. So we're saying it's wrong and evil and phobic. Interesting about the pathology of homosexuality is I remember in 1980 I was in health class. You guys weren't even zygotes, by the way. And were you alive? You were alive.
No.
You weren't either.
I was born in 88.
In 1980, I'm the only. You were. El Guapo was alive. When were you born, El Guapo?
80.
Oh, so.
Got the good Reagan years.
You did. You were born. I was born when JFK was president. He was shot. I was born on a Monday. He was shot on a Friday, same week. C.S. Lewis died too. But this is going south. So let me wind that backwards. So I was in health class and they showed us a video. And for us, a video back then was an actual real turning, right? It was, I don't know what video, it was a movie.
Film on a reel that had to be wound up on another reel with a projector.
Yes. This is amazing. A lot of young people won't believe this, but they used to just put like plastic pictures and shoot light through them on a wall. Is that crazy or what?
It is crazy.
And that's how they did it. And we called it a movie or a film. So they showed these two guys walking, and it was a psych film in health class. In 1980, they said the one guy has homosexual desires, but the other guy is secretly afraid of being a homosexual. He has internal fear of homosexuality, so his friend won't tell him that he's homosexual. That is where the term homophobia comes from.
Yep.
So the guy who's actually heterosexual, or let's call it, you're not going to like this out there, Mr. Zeitgeist, normal, the guy who's normal, at least in his sexuality, could be weird in other ways, is the one who's mentally ill, right?
Yeah, because a phobia would be an irrational fear, meaning
That's
you're
a
not mentally
pathology.
well. It's a pathology.
A phobia is a pathology. You have an irrational fear, meaning it doesn't make sense. It's not reasonable. You should not be afraid of being gay.
Yeah, like if you were in Yellowstone National Park visiting and you got out of your car and there were bears in the field and you were afraid that there were bears, that wouldn't be a phobia because it's like it's a reasonable fear.
Get back in the car.
Get back in the car.
Yes.
But like agoraphobia, the fear of leaving your house for no.
What's wrong with that one? I like that one.
So phobias. Anytime they attach phobia to it, so xenophobia, afraid of immigrants, homophobia,
That's
they're trying to say that you have a mental illness, you have an irrational fear.
If you criticize Islam, you are
Islamophobia. Islamophobic.
So now phobic has become a word to use as a hammer to say you're mentally ill. So the zeitgeist. So as a Christian, I am not able to say you're born gay and believe it if I want to be consistent with the Bible, or that gay is good. The Bible says that sexual things are pretty limited in their expressions, and that one is a no-go. So I am against the world spirit, against the zeitgeist. I'm against the world, and God puts me in that difficult place. It's like He said, I'm going to put you right in the middle of this, and the world, if you can just shut up, Mike, and quit talking about it, and then no one will know. And I've talked about it all the time. I'm using it as an example today. But I'm an exile. This isn't my home. There is not just me wishing for heaven. They actually don't like the things I believe deep in my heart, and they push me back. I'm an exile in the world. So are you.
Yeah, and I would actually even say, thinking on the fly, like this was your home and is no longer your home. You were born to the world. You were born an object of sinfulness, and you were born into the zeitgeist of the world. And so almost the word exile contained in the meaning of the world is that you were in a place that was yours. You called it your home. And then the other people that existed in that home have taken it away from you, have pushed you out of it.
Why have they done that?
And because they didn't like your impact on that society, or
they say, I have changed.
You've changed, right?
Yes, that's a great illustration. This was my family. They all love me. I came home one day. They say, you have changed. It's kind of like when you got a bunch of Philadelphia Democrats, and one of them comes home and says, I'm voting for Trump. That's it. He's out.
Yeah, and I know that there's many people listening to this that experience happened to them when they came to Christ in this church.
Yes, and I've had that experience in certain. It can be in degrees, but this brings us to Ephesians 2. You were dead in your trespasses and sins in which you formerly walked according to the course of this world. Ephesians 2:2. That's the zeitgeist, the course of this world. And then it says, according to the prince of the power of the air. Who do you think that is?
Satan.
That's Satan. That's not God. He's called a prince not because he's royal or to be respected, but because he has power over, he has his own minions. And they're not the cute little yellow ones either. These are nasty demons you don't want to see. And then it says, of the spirit that's now working in the sons of disobedience. That word spirit there is exactly what we mean when we say zeitgeist. It's not an actual living spirit. The devil is, but the spirit, well, it could be the devil being referred to. Nevertheless, it's the thinking process that's working in the sons of disobedience. But it says that's in which you formerly walked. That's such a great insight, Will, that you were once a part of the zeitgeist and you actively chose to leave, or God chose you, because it says you were dead and that caused you. It said, among them we too all formerly lived in the lusts of our flesh, indulging the desires of the flesh and the mind, and were by nature children of wrath, even as the rest. we weren't of any different quality. Then all of a sudden, what happened? But God, being rich in mercy because of his great love with which he loved us, even when we were dead in our transgression, made us alive together with Christ. So it is the act of becoming a Christian, being regenerated, is to be transferred from one world to another or one domain to another.
Almost like
Colossians
there's
1:13.
Almost like there's a verse.
Do you know that one?
Yeah, you have been transferred from the domain of darkness to the kingdom of his beloved Son.
This guy's brilliant. He knew Colossians 1:13. He's memorized the entire Bible. So you've been transferred from the domain of darkness into the kingdom of his beloved Son. So now you are spiritually in exile in this world. They don't want you unless you're willing to compromise and change.
Which is why Jesus says all the time, like, don't be surprised. You're not greater than the master. They hated me. They'll hate you also. And that's why he says, count it all joy when people slander you and lie about you and whatever. Whatever is not in the Bible. But
and you should count it all joy because your reward is great.
Yeah.
So God is going to pay you back for this. It doesn't mean every moment of life is pain, but...
One, can I go back to...
Anywhere you want.
My conviction early on about this is like, I am generally someone who loves the world. Like, if you read this verse wrong, although we all have suffering to go through, like, I like all the gifts God has given me. I love my wife. I think my house is comfortable. I love my child.
Dogs.
Yeah, like,
I love
sunshine's great. I like going to the beach. Like, I generally...
No, sunshine, you mean her?
No.
You don't like her. I got it.
No, she's
we don't
awful.
like her.
I meant like...
I think she's all right.
I meant like sunshine in the sky. Like, I like living, and that's okay. That's not
so.
One,
okay.
you never don't elevate the gifts above the giver. So acknowledge that those are all gifts from God. But like, it's okay to enjoy the gifts God gives you.
Right.
That's not you loving the world.
Thank you for that clarification. That gets me to where I was gonna go when I asked the first question. So it's like it was planned. We went all over the place. We came right back. When the Bible says God so loved the world, I'm going to give you a softball, so I want you to hit it out of the park. When it says God so loved the world, how come that's not the zeitgeist? Or aren't we saying that we...
God hates the zeitgeist.
But John 3:16 says God so loved the world.
Well, this is where you might trap me with your fancy software in the Greek. So I don't know if the underlying words are the same.
You don't need any Greek. They're the same.
Huh?
It's the same.
They're the same? Okay. But that doesn't mean they're referring to the same thing. Like, the world in John 3:16 is creation itself. So as sin came into the world through one man and also death, like that corruption... In Genesis, we learn affects everything. It affects all of creation, is under the stain of original sin and the corruption of original sin. It's God's desire to redeem and put right his created order that goes beyond just man and what man thinks. So the zeitgeist has to do with what man thinks, but there's more to creation than just man and what he thinks.
I like this. You're thinking it through and answering as you think it through. So what does it...
It's so scary when on camera Mike goes, I'm throwing you a softball, and you're like, oh, I hope I don't swing and miss at this one.
These guys can fix it. And soon with AI, we won't even be sitting here.
Yeah.
They're going to come up with the whole thing. So when he says he loves the world... What does he mean? Who does he mean?
People?
Yeah, he means the people of the world. He means God so loves the people of the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever should believe in him should not perish but have everlasting life.
Yeah, and this ties in with this like everyday Christian doctrine that like we hate the sin and love the sinner. Or just in our last podcast,
because we were the sinner.
Muslims aren't the problem. Islam is the problem.
Yeah, we'll
right?
get back to that in a bit.
God has nothing but disdain for the thoughts of men that are not in alignment with his desire, but that doesn't mean he hates the man.
That's right. Exactly. So even though we were still sinners, Christ died for us because he loves us. By the way, I saw another one, a Calvinist who doesn't do his Calvin right, on Twitter put, you should never say God loves you because you don't know he loves you. You got to say, it says you never see that in the Bible. They just say, repent and believe. And if so, and what they're trying to say is God doesn't love everybody. He only loves the ones he's planned to save, and he hates everybody else. That is not a scriptural doctrine. It's a dogma that comes from someone trying to make everything fit neatly in their little tiny pea brains. And the God so loved the world doesn't exclude anybody, unless your doctrine says, no, he doesn't. Therefore, what he really meant was God so loved the saved of the world. Thank you for adding that, but nothing in the context indicates that. Well, how could he hate them later and send them to hell? The problem of how God loves someone and hates someone probably has to do with A, your definition of love, and B, your problem that he doesn't have with time. Love means to want that which is good for another person. If you define love as just feeling happy, that can be a byproduct of love, but it's often not there. Baby constantly wakes up in the middle of the night and you're a sinner and you're feeling grumpy. You're not feeling good feelings, and your wife says,
What?
It's your turn. And you're like, you love your wife, but you're not feeling those crush feelings. You're like, no, it's your turn. But you do it anyway because you do what's best for the other person. That's love. And the point is, it doesn't matter what the definition is. The Bible doesn't say God hates people. It says he takes no pleasure in the death of the wicked. But here's the point about the word love, or the word world. Context is king when we study the Bible. A lot of people try to trip you up by doing what I just did. And what I was doing was called equivocating.
Yeah.
You know what that is?
I do, very much
Okay,
so.
good. Now, this is a softball then. What's equivocating?
Yeah, equivocating is using the same word for two different terms, and generally on purpose. A lot of time it can be on accident. So a word is just the same letters. So I'm trying to think of ones.
What determines a word's meaning is its context.
Is the context, not the actual
Because every word
letters.
has a range of meanings. Back in the old days, we had things called dictionaries. They were made of paper. And if you looked up a dictionary definition of any word, it would often have the number 1 and then a sentence, number 2, then a sentence, number 3, then a sentence. Because it could have 3 definitions. It could have 4 definitions. Same word.
Yeah.
Equivocating is when you take that word and use it in an argument as one of those definitions and quickly switch it to another one as a trick. Or because you're just dumb. Because sometimes it's just, you shouldn't put to malice, which is just ignorance. Sometimes you ignorantly think that way.
But in today's world, it is often used.
Often they equivocate.
On purpose.
Yeah, exactly. So it's equivocating for me. It was a trick question. The answer is, in one place, when it says you have to hate the world, the definition of world is not the same as in God so loved the world. And context is king. The context of the text always matters. So anyway, we are exiles in this world. It sounds like a dangerous thing to be. It's like a sheep in the midst of wolves. Doesn't sound happy. And you can enjoy the things of this world because that is another definition of world. That's a third one. When you were talking about enjoying the created matter in your world, even if it's humans, you're saying I'm enjoying the visceral, that means gut level pleasure of being alive. I like ice cream. I like the cool breeze on my face on a hot day. That is using the word world a third way to say the experience of being alive on a planet that I'm on. So we can get confused. But we're strangers too, which means this isn't our home, but it was once our home. Folks, I think that's the great part, is you can enjoy this world and know there's something better. It's not like this world has to suck for you and there's something better. It's not like God saying, I know you used to enjoy being alive, but now you're going to hate it because you're not of this world. No, God made this world. It's broken, but it still can be fun and pleasurable. And you can enjoy that with Thanksgiving. So all you if you're not a stranger to this world, I pray you become one. Let's get into our Bible text for today, you stranger. Unless you got more to say.
It would just take me back. I mean, you were railing against monks like an episode or two ago, and
I like doing that. I
It's
like
the
picking on
same.
the
It's the
monks.
same idea. I mean, this is why asceticism, the idea that any sort of pleasure derived from material things in this world is somehow sinful, is foolishness. I mean, they're gifts from God, and acknowledge Him and thank Him for them, and then He gave them to you.
Or that pain should be promoted because it's redemptive.
Yeah,
Pain, God does use pain, but you shouldn't ask for it.
yeah,
It's pretty dumb to ask for it.
yeah.
Paul was lowered over a wall in a basket. Why? To get away from pain. They were going to kill him. He didn't say, I'm ready to die for Christ. So, no, he says, you got a basket and a rope, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And away he went.
Okay, so jumping ahead then, because that theme was out of the end of Luke 9. We're in Luke 10, I believe in verse 17, for those of you following along at home. Luke 10, starting in verse 17.
Yes. And this is a really cool text.
Now, you kept saying 70. I think we should address that in two of our most common translations used in the church here.
Yes.
I think they use a different number.
70 or 72.
70 or 72.
Yes, it is. And the reason why is, this could take us down another rabbit hole.
Well, I just thought it was worth addressing.
Do you know why? Because I can tell you why. You probably know why.
I don't remember.
Okay.
It's in there somewhere, but I don't have
I'm
it
going to
right
say
now.
it and you go, oh, yeah. How do we know this is why it's a rabbit hole? How do you know what is in the New Testament is what was written by the writers of the New Testament?
Oh, I do know that.
Yes.
It's the book I'm in, right? I'm reading a book called Scribes in Scripture. It's very good.
Good. Well, then you can correct me if I get it wrong. We don't have a single original letter of the New Testament. I know, right? And yet we crazy, stupid Christians think that it's inerrant and infallible in its original language. That last part about is its original autograph actually is how you're supposed to say it. When the Gospel of Luke was written and Luke put down his pen, it was exactly what God wanted him to say. That's what we believe. But we don't have that original letter because nothing lasts forever. But what Luke...
And it wouldn't even be good. I'll argue that later. But
wouldn't be good to have the original
correct.
because we'd worship it or something.
No, it's more corruptible because then you could never be sure that it wasn't changed. That's what happened to the Quran in the first caliphate. Because if you have the Bible,
Yeah.
well, and then I'm the first pope, and I say, don't worry, I'll protect
I have it over here.
And then I come back and say,
That's a
this
great
is
point.
the Bible.
Yeah.
It whatever it says.
And you open it up and there's part of it is in crayon and part of it's been cut and taped in there. You're like, hey.
Right. If you have one original source, then in an ideal world where men don't want to corrupt the
Yeah.
word of God, it's nice, but one source is extremely corruptible.
Yeah.
Because if one corrupt person gets it, they can change it.
Pope with crayons. You say, Pope, listen, we got you that pack of 84 colors and we see that some of them are no longer sharp and there's colors in here.
Well, we can talk about it with Islam, but it's like a big deal in
Big
Islam.
problem. So what happened was because the Romans had a literate society and they had a common language, and no, it wasn't Italian, it was Greek. And they loved the Greek culture. They thought it was a high culture. And the Greek language was the coin of the realm among all the different languaged people. So it was written in what is called Koine Greek, or the common Greek. And so what happened was Luke wrote a letter, and the local church had it. And there were more than one literate person perhaps there. And he said, I'd like a copy to teach over here, and I'd like a copy to teach over there. So they just copied it. Well, then they said, you know what? There's another house church a mile away. They would like a copy of it. Let's give them ours. They'd say, no, we ain't giving them ours. Let's make a copy of it. And then there'd be another house church the other direction, so they'd make a copy of it. And then those churches would make copies of it. And because they could read, there was a great, let's say, childbirth of manuscripts through the centuries. And because Christians are evangelical, constantly teaching one another and circulating letters, there's a ton of manuscripts of Luke, tons of them. And so many so that if you bring them all together, all the ones, and many of them survive to this day, but not the original. And so if you brought all the manuscripts together and compare them, you'll see a lot of similarities and some differences. Most of the time, the differences tell you that wasn't in the original. Because let's say you have 1,000 manuscripts and only 2 of them have the apostle named Ralph. And then he called the apostle Ralph. And you go, okay, these 2 have the sentence that say apostle Ralph. And they're both from the same geographic area. Let's go with there was not an apostle named Ralph. Because he's not in the in any of the others. So that's how you know where the errors are. Is because you just put them all. It's not whisper down the lane. They didn't copy it and then destroy the original. Often it's said that, right? People say, well, how do you know this is the Bible? They destroyed the first one and then copied the next one. They could have errors all down the line. It's not like that. You would have to destroy the one you copied from every time for that to happen. But if you copied 10 different times from the same manuscript, you will have errors, but they would literally be 10 different errors. And you could collect that, or you'd get it right. I don't know if you guys are understanding what I'm saying, but here's the point. Many ancient manuscripts have the sentence that says that he sent out 70. Now, after this, the Lord appointed 70 others and sent them in pairs ahead of him. And there is no dispute that it says that, except several manuscripts say 72. One of those is an error. Which one? We don't know. So it was either 70 or it was 72. Numbers can be difficult because they often will use a different script, like the Roman numerals and whatnot.
Yeah, and you touched on this last time, so we can move on after this. But this is a good example of the level of uncertainty there are in only a few places in the Bible over what's the original, and essentially none of them have much doctrinal impact. Like there might be some symbolic or other things. Is 70 versus 72? Why 70 or why 72? But either way, the passage.
You mean
reads,
another one says 72? This changes everything.
Right.
No one will ever say that.
And that's
except I just did.
That's most of the places in the Bible where there's still some level of uncertainty as to what the original autograph was are not impactful to core beliefs.
Yeah, actually, none of the great doctrines of the church at all are affected by that.
Like, I don't want to burst everybody's bubble, but like,
don't do it. You're going to burst their bubble.
I'm going to burst their bubble.
Is you going to go with a woman caught in adultery, aren't you?
No, I was going to go with Goliath.
Goliath's in the Bible.
No, whether he was 6'4" or 6'9".
By spans.
By spans.
Which would be 9 foot something or 10 foot something, right? Or 9.
Well, no, it's either 9 foot or in one case, there's a couple things that actually he would end up being 6'9", 6 foot 9 inches in modern.
Nah, he had to be.
So they go bigger than that.
Come on,
but
man.
I'm just saying that's one.
Saul was head and shoulders above most guys. He was probably 6'9". The bigger question is, could he shoot the outside shot? You know he can dunk at that size. All right, so he appointed 70 people or 72. And they all came back, and it says in verse 17 that the 70 returned with joy. Joy was actually the coordinator. She was always there helping them out. She was.
I knew you were going there.
Boys, you go here, you go there.
You're getting predictable. That was cheesy. I liked it though.
I'm getting predictable.
I saw it coming.
Well, that's all right, man. This is. I don't have any new material. I've been on the earth 61 years, and I'm out of stuff. So 70 returned with joy, saying, and joy said, "They're back, Lord. Even the demons are subject to us in your name." They're very excited. Why do you think they're so happy? We're left to speculate why they're happy. Because they can push demons around, I guess. Well, hopefully there's more than that. They visited people. They got some good food, and some of them are they're pretty outgoing. They get energy.
Yeah, and power is always fun.
Power is fun.
Well, I'm just in reality, like power's fun. You can use it for bad things, but
and we were gods to them.
Well, particularly when you're using it, you're casting like you're helping someone. So whenever somebody comes to you in need, right? Like, boy, it would always be awesome to have the means to help them with their need. it feels good to help people.
Oh,
And so
actually,
here
it does.
they have the power to actually help people in need. It's cool. It's a fun thing.
Right? And in this particular moment, Luke is highlighting them saying, Lord, even the demons are subject to us in your name. We didn't know you were giving us all the great powers. And he said to them, I was watching Satan fall from heaven like lightning. Behold, I have given you authority to tread on serpents and scorpions and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing will injure you. Okay, now we're getting interesting. Satan falling from heaven like lightning. What does that mean? Answer, I don't know.
So glad you weren't going to ask me.
I don't know. Now, there is a place in Revelation where Satan is thrown down to the earth. Heaven could be the sky. This could be symbolic language of his fall from he
Fell quickly.
we assume he tried to overlap. Yeah, he fell like lightning. He does he move quickly, or does God just have quite a fastball when he throws a guy to the boom, look at him go. It could be him being banished to bug people on earth at the time of Adam and Eve. I can't define exactly when this is. It could be a future event spoken in the past, like right before the Great Tribulation. But what I will say is, the point is Satan is been defeated by God and thrown down to the earth, and the authority over him belongs to Jesus. And when he says, "I give you authority to tread on serpents and scorpions," he is most likely speaking symbolically, though for all I know, they went out and stepped on some scorpions to see if they'd get bit. Of evil, the powers of evil, over all the power of the enemy, and nothing will injure you. Now, we know that later, a lot of these guys are going to get killed. So when he says injure, even that, he's saying you have the authority that nothing would harm you, but he's not saying I won't let harm come to you, but anything I give you authority over, you are going to be able to crush. So I was going to look something up there. Anyway, the point is he gave authority over the devil to them. Do we have that authority today is a question I could ask, and I do ask. Do we have that authority today over the devil? I wouldn't talk to the devil if I were you, because you don't know he's there. Like if you know someone has a demon, how do you know someone has a demon? I think they were seeing some very specific things in Jesus' day, and there's no evidence to think that we are seeing those specific things. In other words, demonic activity among humans can look different at different times because of the plan of God. It doesn't mean demons aren't here. They are. It doesn't mean people don't have them in them. They might. They probably do. But unless you...
Yeah, they're called aliens, Mike.
Aliens. So unless you can be sure, though... I mean, I see people who will be with other Christians and they'll pray, I bind you, Satan, in the name of Jesus, or I bind the demon of my football team losing, or whatever it is. They just start talking to demons.
We talked about this.
Don't tell me you know the episode number. That would freak me out.
I don't. It wasn't an early one. It's somewhere in the middle. But where, I was hanging out at this Christian event, and at this Christian ministry, which involved riding quads and dirt bikes.
Christian quad ministry,
Heck
baby.
Yeah. Kid broke his back
Well,
and became paraplegic.
Did they Christianly heal him? I don't think that's...
No, and this
is not a good ministry. It's not
they
bad ministry.
dangerous. But there was a woman there who said that we had to pray this demon's claws out of this kid's back to heal him. Like the reason he was paraplegic was because a demon had gotten into his spine. And
well, why don't they just get it out and he'll get better?
That was the goal. But I just thought it was interesting. Like maybe, but or his material spine could just be damaged.
So his actual physical, but you can have broken bones. So in this case, though, they have authority and they like that. I think we still have authority over Satan, but that doesn't mean we have total control over everything in the forces of evil. God does. But what it means is the devil doesn't have authority. We can proclaim the word of God and set people free from sin.
And I'm
while
trying
the
to
devil's
remember,
just standing there.
You'll help me. This is another verse in the entire Bible, of all the verses I have memorized, which is all of them, as you said,
That's right.
it says something.
You're turning the pages in your mind right now.
Resist
aren't
the
you?
devil and he will flee from you.
That's right. Submit to God.
Submit to God.
Resist the devil.
Resist the devil and he will flee from you. What is that in James? I can't
Yes, it
remember.
is somewhere. If you don't know where, you don't have it memorized. So I don't have it memorized either. But then he goes, that's a remarkable thing to say to them. And they're excited about that. But then he says, nevertheless, do not rejoice in this. They're like, hey, we were just rejoicing in it. Well, stop it. It's like, oh, dang. Is he just being a buzzkill? No. He says that the spirits are subject to you, but rejoice that your names are recorded in heaven. You should be happy that you have beaten the grave and have eternal life. Satan is a temporary problem, but death is a forever problem, and it's been solved, and so you have life, and that's the good part. The really cool next verse is verse 21. He says, at that time, he, that's Jesus, rejoiced greatly in the Holy Spirit. How do you know that? I mean, he was like happy. Look at Jesus. He's so happy right now.
Yeah,
He was
just beaming. Maybe he's like skipping around too. You never know.
not like gay skipping, right?
Yeah, no, like the
hippie
literal,
skipping?
like the literal word "gay," like happy,
Yeah, see, he would be happy, but he's not.
like a frolicking.
He doesn't
Lamb.
frolic. He doesn't frolic.
They call him the Lamb of God.
That's so
I mean,
feminine.
lambs frolic.
no, that's when he's going to die. It's
El
more
Guapo agrees.
El
with me.
Guapo. What does he know? He's old.
I actually own sheep, so
And they frolic, right?
frolic.
Yeah.
Well, Jesus is not a frolicking sheep. He's a dying sheep. He's a lion. He's a lion when he's out there. He's roaring for joy. He's like, roar. He's not frolicking.
I don't know.
Like some kind of flower child hippie. And
Hey, I ain't a hippie, but I have skipped in my life before. So
well, we all skip when we're kids, but when you grow up, and if you're still skipping, Will, it's a pathology.
you ever see me skip?
Yes.
See?
Well, I already know that El Guapo is kind of, you know what I'm saying.
Okay. Anyway,
Little light
so
mellow.
he's
I'm gonna get in
Jesus
trouble.
himself is rejoicing. He's rejoiced in the Spirit.
But he does not doing it in an effeminate manner,
Correct.
in a masculine happiness.
Yeah.
And what he
Which looks like just solemn sternness, looking at the clouds. That's the only acceptable way to rejoice.
he actually honked a loogie. Yeah, I feel good. Someone get me a beer. I'm so
So happy. I'm so happy. Can't you tell? I thank you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth,
He's gonna strike us dead.
that you have hidden these things from the wise.
So,
All right.
what's he excited about? He's excited. I'm going to tell you before I read it to you. He's excited. I think this is my theory of why he's rejoicing. He came with a mission to do to save people, right? Not to condemn, but to save. He's seeing. It's like the guy. Oh, that won't work. I was going to say the guy from the A Team, but you don't even know what the A Team is.
I do, but only because they made a remake. Which guy?
Well, not Mr. T, of course, but no, the boss would say, I love it when a plan comes together after
Yes.
at the end.
Yeah.
Jesus is like, I started out doing my ministry and preaching, and I've raised up 12, and now I'm sending out 70. They're all coming back, and they're rejoicing that they're doing the mission, that they're doing my mission, what I do. And this is the beginning of a multiplication of people doing it. And I didn't make them go to college of Pharisees. They didn't have to be super educated. I just picked regular people. They have the Holy Spirit's power, which is a win, right? You don't even have to get a degree and you get the Holy Spirit's power. They're preaching the message. They're happy. Their names are in heaven. It's the beginning of a great movement. And he who knows and understands more than us speaks in a very philosophical tone about it. It's not practical, it's philosophical. He's thinking big picture, and he says, I praise you, O Father, Lord of heaven and earth, that you have hidden these things from the wise and intelligent and revealed them to infants. I'm glad he went with infants instead of morons, because that's the contrast to wise and intelligent. But he's saying, look, the smartest people in the world cannot stomp on Satan and bring life through their words to other people, but these guys can. And yes, Father, for this was well-pleasing in your sight. All things have been handed over to me by my Father, and no one who knows who the Son is except the Father, and who the Father is except the Son, and anyone to whom the Son wills to reveal him. So he is including in the bottom there, the verse 22. It's not the bottom, it's the bottom of my page. Verse 22, he's including, I got authority that I brought with me from heaven that the Father gave me. I gave it to these guys. And they know who the Father is because I know who the Father is. And they know I'm the Son because the Father knows I'm the Son. There's a secret that I let these uninitiated people into. And now look how well this plan is working. And then he turns to the disciples and said privately, so this wasn't one of his public sermons, just his own guys. He said, blessed are the eyes which see the things you see. For I say to you that many prophets and kings wish to see the things which you see and did not see them, hear the things which you hear and did not hear them. You can imagine Elijah. Elijah was on the mountain of Mount Carmel, and he had all these prophets of Baal. And all the people were saying, maybe the prophets of Baal are right, and our God is wrong. And you're like, you dummies, we're Jews. And so Elijah says, tell you what, all those prophets of Baal, set up an altar, put an ox on it, and see if they can call their gods to put fire down on it. So they do, and they're marching around this thing, and they're calling on their gods, and they're cutting themselves because apparently their God likes it when you cut yourself and bleed. And wah, 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 doing those kind of dance sounds, you know, like American Indians, I guess. And they're doing whatever they got to do, chanting Buddhist stuff, and no fire comes from heaven. So Elijah makes fun of him. He says, maybe your God's in the bathroom. Maybe he's sleeping. Maybe he can't hear you. And then, after they go all day long, Elijah says, it's my turn. And he rolls up his sleeves and he says, cut up my animal, but pour tons of water on it. And dig a trough around it so the water doesn't get away. So they do it. He goes, no more water. And they do it. No more water. So he does it. And he says, God, you know what to do. Fire just eats the whole thing up. Then, him and his boys, they kill all these bad prophets. And then Jezebel gets mad, the queen. She says, I'm going to get you. And he runs away in fear. Why did I tell you that story? Well, that's a great prophet of the Old Testament. And he's saying, blessed are you, because they wish they could see these things. What would have Elijah done with the knowledge of the gospel and the power of the Holy Spirit over the demons? My man would have set up shop right then, and it never would have come to an end. And he's saying, but I didn't save this for the great prophets, you nameless 70 or 72. I don't know which one. Timothy counted it. He's not good. Write them both down. One of them will, I don't know how many you are, and your names don't even get in the book. But guess what? You have the power. Again, we're back to the priesthood of the believer. We see, we receive, we give. And that's awesome stuff. I don't know. Our timer is gone here, Sunshine. So I have no idea if I should stop talking about the Bible or go on.
We should stop.
We should stop. Okay.
But it's good. It was good.
It's
a
really
good
cool.
place to stop anyway.
Okay, I feel good about it. I'm feeling it.
I like that section.
It was fun, huh?
Well, the specialness of the New Testament era, like this idea that what everyone has been waiting for is here. Like, I feel very, very grateful to have been born post-Christ,
Oh, heck yeah. To have been born in America?
Well, and yeah, to have been born after the leaven has been in the loaf for a long time is also even nicer.
Yes, where us pagans actually get saved. I like it.
So, and then I was also just thinking about the nameless 70.
Yeah.
How how few people in the New Testament are held in any sort of esteem. Like even the 12 apostles. Most Christians have a hard time naming all 12, and it's not even because they're bad Christians. It's like they don't get huge spotlights other than the 12. Like, okay, you hear about how Andrew and Philip and Nathan and, come to follow Jesus, but it's not like they have big character plots.
Yeah.
You get the epistle writers get most of the spotlight because they wrote epistles, but the real focus is just all on the message and the mission going out. And here 70 people are given the ability to do miracles. They don't get any names in the book.
They should have just like tattooed themselves or something. But with numbers, he said count off. First 70 get to go.
But you get what I'm saying?
I do get what you're saying, but here's something that I want to push farther our imaginations. They probably, every one of them, survived the death and resurrection of Christ. And therefore, the 40 days after in his ascension, and the next 10 days, they made it to Pentecost. And after that, they were probably known in the new church. And I mean, there could have been some guys saying, I was one of the 70. That you were not. Yes, I was. But our faith is an eyewitness faith. And that...
You're welcome. Thank you, Peter. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And that brings historic reliability. Like if this story isn't true and Luke writes it, someone would say, hey, are any of those 70 guys around? Nope. I mean, there's guys who know people who are those guys.
Yeah.
So there was a historical reliability that comes from all the witnesses created from all these things. Anyway.
All right.
Well, let's talk about Islam again because
we're going back.
Yeah, I love me some Islam because I want to look up our comments on that.
Cultural commentaries, current events.
Yes, and we
I'm
did
going to say Islam again.
our last, not our last, but it'll be about 3 podcasts ago. I guess 2 podcasts ago when you hear this.
2, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It was. Who picks the titles for these babies? We don't start with a title. Cruiser does. So he called it. He's trying to get us killed, I think, because he's trying to get fatwas on us. Because
what did he call it? Islam sucks or something?
He called it Islam sucks, which is we're in huge trouble. No, he called it the truth about Islam. Now we talked about the Bible. We talked about other things, but he focused on that. So we got some comments. Don Bowers, our boy, Don freaking Bowers, as he's known here, jumped in and said, I have to say I enjoyed it a lot. I don't know what some of these other comments are talking about, except they don't want the truth about religious sects against Jesus. I'd like to see other religions talked about and explained. Great request. We need to do that. It is a great request. Thank you for all you do. So that you'd think, okay, so that we're off to a good start. But that was the last comment. All the other comments were pretty much telling us, you guys are stupid heads.
And offensive.
Now, not all of them were good with English. One of them says, you say that the prophet Sawa said, Prophet Sawa. They're so afraid of saying the name Muhammad and all these other things that Allah's kingdom is not of this world. And it's our job to make everyone Muslim or kill them or enslave them. But that's at best a very ignorant thing to say. And at worst a really bad lie. So says Syed Hosseinial Mada 4,456, which means there's 4,455 other Syed Hussein, whatever his name is, out there. So he's not giving us any data except you guys are dum-dum heads. You guys are poopy heads, you know. The next one is from Dippin' Dots 9972, which means there are 9,900.
His name's Nuar Ahmed Abu Qadra.
That is a cool name. You got to give it to him. That is a really cool name. So what's his first part of that?
Noor. Nuar Ahmed
Noor
Abu
Ahmad.
Qadra.
That is really a cool name you got there. I like it. But all you're telling us is that we're ignorant. And trust me, Get in line. You're not the first. I've been called ignorant from people I know better than you. I've had parents and friends, and so maybe I'm ignorant of many things. The next guy, Dippin' Dots, which is the name his parents gave him, probably because he looks like one or something. I don't know. Why do you give your kid the name Dippin' Dot? Let's call him Dippin' Dot. That was his dad. He said, also, please refer me to the history books you read on Islam. Laughing face. Ha ha ha! The amount of stuttering you took before you got to history books as your answer from where you learned about Islam is genuinely, it's double genuine, comical. Oh my, Mr. Dippin' Dots, I'm crying at that great... Dude, you got to work on your trolling. I mean, history... He's just got to work on his trolling. But before that, he put, it's genuinely scary. So he's frightened that you... Why would a guy named Dippin' Dots be scared of a podcast? I'd be scared of being named Dippin' Dots.
Well,
anyway, it's generally scary. You believe the words, he's either his name's Dippin' Dots or he's too much of a coward to use his real name online.
No.
Yeah, that's what I always think. If you don't use your real name, you're a coward. That's the way I look at it. If you're a man.
But that's this guy. That is Dippin' Dots.
Oh, that's Dippin' Dots.
Yeah.
How'd you find his real name?
Just click on Dippin' Dots. Takes you to his page.
The other guy was Sayed Hossein Massinio.
Yeah, that's his real name.
Oh, well, you didn't tell me that.
I was clicking on Dippin' Dots.
Dippin' Dots.
Dippin' Dots gives
why
his
are
real
you
name.
ashamed of your name, Dippin' Dots? Put it out there. So I didn't know it was the same guy. So I still like your real name. If I had a cool name like that, I'd use it. So Dippin' Dots thinks it's actually hilarious and terrifying. Please read for your sakes. Okay. So again, he doesn't give us any data. None of these people give us any data. They just insult us. To which I say, you're not the first. Half a Baja Blast. Half a Baja Blast. Half a Baja Blast. That's what that is. Half a Baja Blast.
That is awesome.
All he wrote was God is great, to which I can agree. I would not say Allah is great because there is no such thing as Allah. But God is indeed great. So I agree with you, half a Baja Blast. And then this other person, Cali Z10, says, sorry guys, you seem to have no understanding of Islam. Another one just calls us ignorant. I love this one. I'm from the part of the world. I'm from that part of the world and even know what Islam is about. You are viewing and basing Islam from a Western viewpoint. I always loved the Western viewpoint. I learned that one in college. The Western mindset can't understand the Eastern mind. Yes. A view where Islam is, for now, a minority. For now. Do you see? He's actually agreeing with what I said about Islam wanting to take over the world. It's for now. Hassan Chop, we shall get you. Dude, I just want you to know, Mr. Kelly Zio, you can't stop the Church of Jesus Christ. We are immortal. You can kill us. We will rise up again. And the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church. And we've been defeating Islam throughout the ages. It's never going to stop. But anyway, you can talk tough. Wait, I'm not done with this. I could explain to you what Islam is, but that would mean that Islam needs to be discussed in all of the matter of what Islam is. This guy, dude, he talks like Kamala. What Oach are willing to do. I don't know what that means. In short, I'm sure it's a typo. You say that the extremes are not Muslim and the liberal are. That the one thing you need to acknowledge, the extreme is the real view of Islam. For example, a Christian that kills, steals, and lies is not a true Christian according to the religion. Actually, that's not true. A Christian who steals, kills, and lies can be a true Christian, but is not behaving correctly. Because we believe a true Christian is one who is born again from the Spirit of God. That does not mean it's impossible to sin. A Muslim that still kills and lies is a real Muslim according to their religion. That's right. So either you are not honest with your discussion or you haven't put the effort to learn about them. Listen, dude, I know you're trying hard to say something, and I actually do respect the fact that you tried to give me something coherent. I don't think English is your first language, so I'm missing what your point. So I can't even make fun of it because I can't even answer it intelligently because it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and I would guess the main thrust of everything we talked about had nothing to do with lying, stealing, or anything. It was that if someone won't convert, then option 2 is to kill them or enslave them.
Well,
that's the point. It has nothing to do with cheating or lying or stealing.
And that is what the original Islamic doctrine was. This isn't something that I thought up, by the way. The one guy wants to know the history books. Dude.
The Quran.
Yeah, well, actually the Quran, the Hadith. But actually history shows this. So I decided, since I am a stupid, ignorant white Westerner, and you, my friend, are, you know what? You're no better. You also are a stupid, ignorant white Westerner who hasn't read the right history books. I thought I'd get someone brown. So I brought in my friend. Well, she's not really my friend. I read her book. It's called Infidel. I'm telling that to Dippin' Dots. I read Infidel, Mr. Dippin' Dots. That's not the only book I read, but I really don't feel like defending myself against a troll. You don't feed the trolls, and that's what you are right now. You actually, at least this Kali Z person tried to make an argument. And Kali did it as English not his first language, so he actually was more impressive than you, Dippy. So Dippy, if you want an argument, maybe you make one. But I did read the book Infidel, and I really like the author. And
Hirsi Ali?
Yes, Ayaan Hirsi Ali. Very impressive. She grew up in North Africa in an Islamic culture. We don't have to. She talks slow, and I tried to get them to speed up this video, but it made her sound like a chipmunk. But you and I are going to do a reaction video for about 17 minutes, a little less than 17 minutes.
All right.
All right. So
I like reacting.
We're going to let her talk. We can talk over her, or if you want to, you can ask them to stop the video. And this is for you, Dippin' Dots.
Oh, I also just...
And I want you to write her a text, tell her that she's too white and Western to know what the heck she's talking about. And if you can do that, I'll do this. I won't do it every week, but I can do it every week till we have 1 million people telling you that what I said was right and that you, my friend, are just a meanie, chili beanie trolling a nice boy like me. Anyway, what were you going to say? He's a meanie, chili beanie.
I'm good.
He's a troll.
Let's react.
All right, let's do it.
Plug for another much better, awesome podcast. I mean, I like ours, but this clip is from Uncommon Knowledge.
Oh, you want to say Uncommon Knowledge from the Hudson Institute is
Hoover Institute. Great.
We have a common love for this interviewer. He's not going to look that impressive, though. He's like, you're talking about your average Western white guy, my buddy, Dippin' Dot. This is an average Western white guy.
Do you know his background, though?
No, was he like a kung fu fighter?
He's the speechwriter for Reagan. He wrote the Mr. Gorbachev tear down this wall.
I had no idea.
He didn't write those words. He wanted to say something else, and Reagan said, "No, this is what I'm saying." He said, "I don't think you should say that." And Reagan said, "This is what I'm saying." He said, "Okay, I guess that's what you're saying."
You got it, boss.
But yeah, he was a speechwriter for Reagan.
He's very intelligent, and he probably reads history books.
Yes.
We could probably ask him, hey, Dippin' Dots, let's find him on social media and ask him, have you ever read a history book? We could give him a laughing smiley emoji to show that he probably never read a history book. Hit it.
Ali, welcome.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. The nature of the problem. Ayaan Hirsi Ali testifying before Congress this past spring, quote, 2 successive administrations, you're talking about those of George W. Bush and Barack Obama, 2 successive administrations have approached the problem of political Islam with a completely flawed strategy. The illusion that a line could somehow be drawn between Islam, a supposed religion of peace adhered to by a moderate majority, and violent extremism engaged in by a tiny minority. Were you telling Congress that Islam isn't a religion of peace?
I was telling Congress that Islam is part religion and part a political philosophy. And that if you focus only on the religious part, praying, fasting,
There you see nothing but peace.
I don't see anything but peace.
Right.
If people want to pray and fast and be together peacefully, have their rituals, I think that's protected, and I don't think that necessarily leads to any kind of violence. You may object to it if you're not religious, but it is religion as we understand it, as the founding fathers, as the framers of the institution might have understood it.
Yes.
But then there is Islam, which is really the major part of Islam, which is a political philosophy. It's a prescription for how society ought to be built, how society ought to be furnished, governed. And that philosophy is not compatible with our American constitutional liberal democracy or any other secular type of government.
So, our dear, some background on her. She was very much a devout Muslim, and understood Islam very well. Was trained in the Quran, wore the hijab or whatever it is, and was very proper. And what happened was she was asked to marry a man from Canada that her father arranged, brought him to Africa, and she didn't want to marry him because she didn't want the sort of life her mother had as a Muslim wife, and she didn't love him. And for some reason, she had read a few Western books and found out that love is fun, and so she wanted to marry a Muslim, but it wanted to be someone she loved. And so because of this, she was going to travel to Canada, and she got to Germany. In Germany, she had a relative, and she decided, I'm cutting the story short, that she was going to run to the home of her relative and find a way to disappear. And her relative says, don't do this. This is bad. It's a stain on Islam. It's a stain on us. But many things had happened in her life. You'd have to read it to see that she had begun to see she loved Islam, but she did not want to be married, which she would thought was oppression. So she found a way to escape to the Netherlands without a visa, where she became a legal citizen eventually. Her father came to get her, and so did all the council, and they, whatever. But as a legal citizen, then she realized she had to break with Islam. She saw Western society, and she realized that it wasn't what Islam had told her it was. The men didn't all turn into demons if you didn't cover up your body. They didn't sexually explode and have to rape all the women. She saw that women could actually have choices and not have to be mutilated. She had her genitals mutilated in a specific way. It wasn't necessarily the same circumcising way. They would actually sew parts of you together to make sure you were pure when you were married. And that was it's very common. Still goes on today among her tribes. And so she decided she wasn't a Muslim. And then, believe it or not, she got elected to the parliament as a citizen of the Netherlands. And then she made a movie with another movie maker complaining about problems with Islam. And so they put a fatwa out on her. They ended up stabbing the movie maker. She told him, I don't want your name on this because you'll be in danger. But he was very flamboyant, very well known. It'd be like a Steven Spielberg to us in America, very well known in the Netherlands. And one day they caught up to him, they killed him, and then they took a note which threatened her life and stabbed it into his chest. Are you listening, Dippin' Dots? This is all Islamic, dude. Okay, little feller. It's not in a history book, little guy. And they stabbed it into his chest, saying they're going to kill her. And she had to have, they constantly moved her around, moved her to different countries from the government of the Netherlands because many people were trying to kill her. And then they tried to use the government against her to get her kicked out. She ended up moving to the United States, and she's married now, I think, to a British man in the United States, something like that. And since she has recently become a Christian, she was not a Christian with making this. So when she is describing to you Islam as both political and religious, she's not a white Westerner. She actually is an insider. She didn't just grow up in those lands. She was the real deal, true believer. And she is saying what we said, was that Islam is political as much as it is religious. It needs world domination. She knows that. And here she is about to criticize and is criticizing the Bush administration and whatever followed that, Obama, for taking it as not political. Anything you want to comment on before we hit play again? Okay, so now you need a thinking cap because she's very smart. and I don't just mean you. I know you have one of those caps, and you've actually sucked it into your brain, so you're always thinking. But people like me need a heads up. Pay attention. So if you're like me, pay attention. Try to listen to what she has to say. Go.
They were conquests. Islam was an empire. And it's the doctrine that governed that empire, on the one hand. On the other hand, there are the human beings. There are the 1.5 or 1.6 billion people out there. And one Muslim varies from another. There is a great deal of diversity. There is diversity of geography, diversity of language, of gender, of income, of age. There is a great deal of diversity among Muslims. The most important one to us is there are some Muslims who, when they look at Islam, they just choose what is religious about it. Again, the praying, the fasting, the community, or the communal rituals.
And you're saying...
and then there are Muslims who say, no, that's not enough. It's not enough to be Muslim in the religious sense only. You have to accept and abide and practice and promote Islam also in its political sense. And it's that group. I don't know how big they are. But in terms of drawing lines, I think that's where we need to start.
I see.
Okay, if you'd stop there, I just want to point out what she's saying is if all Muslims would be content to keep within religious rituals only and erase the political divide or erase the political side of Islam, everything would be fine. And I agree with her. In fact, at our last time, we said that me and El Guapo, and you maybe also, I don't know how you went, we've eaten among many Muslims who do not care about the political. They just want the religious. The difficulty comes in most, or let's say many, if you act politically, they will support you. In other words, they may not take up the guns. They may not Allah Akbar themselves into a building and blow themselves up. But if you do it, they will cheer you, or they will like the spread of Islam that way, which is why, as I said last time, are you paying attention, Dippy? This is for you, Dippy. We ate with some Muslims who were very good to us, knowing we were Christians, knowing that their son had converted to Christ with us. And they welcomed us, and they loved us, and were kind to us, but they would later contribute to beating their daughter-in-law once the village decided that their son was too Christian. They would agree to exiling their son. Why? Because that was their impulse? No. But when it came to the political impulse, they were not going to go against Islam. They know it's connected, is my point. They may not pick up a gun, but they're not going to cry if someone else, if Muslims invade, say, France and take it over, which they're doing, by the way. Any comment on that, or should we just hit play?
Yeah, I would say, going back to our zeitgeist conversation, I'd say the restriction on the portion of Muslims that just want to do the religious rituals is probably an influence over the zeitgeist. They're like, yeah, but murder's not good, and being influenced by that, the general morals of the age. Not that Allah wouldn't find it good.
That's right. So you're saying that if you're born and you say, well, we're Muslims, that's fine. And there are many Muslims like this. They don't want to do jihad. They just want to get married and get a job, make money. And many of them don't even like the oppression of the women, which I do think is oppression. Others would defend it. But I'll tell you, when you're in a Muslim-dominated area, they all cape up for the Islam. You go to Israel, I saw people swimming the Sea of Galilee, Muslims, and these poor women had to be covered head to toe in black outfits while they tried to go swimming. It was like carrying large wet blankets on your back, the poor things, in the sun. And you know, there are varieties. There are a lot of Muslims who don't cover their heads as much, and they let some of their hair show. Some of the wealthier ones in, say, Dubai or the UAE, who really don't believe it that much, but nominally they're never going to let it go, at least not now. So, yeah, there's variety. but the zeitgeist of their country is what helps determine how militant they'll be. All right, let her rip.
You write in The Challenge of Dawa, your testimony before Congress, your book Heretic, calling for a reformation of Islam. You're, of course, aware of the whole history of Islam, but you're talking about the present moment and what the West, the United States in particular, needs to do. However, let me ask you to address the history for a moment. And the argument of which you're well aware runs simply as follows. It takes a moment to set this up, but it's an important question. Islam emerges in the Arabian Peninsula in the 7th century. And within a century, it has swept across North Africa,
Okay, there
which
it
had
is.
been substantially Christian. In
That's
other
what
words,
I
there is a
said last
conquest
time.
that takes place.
Yeah.
It starts in the
And by
7th
the
century
middle
and
of the 8th
sweeps.
century, they're as far north as central France. We have the Battle of Tours.
So that's the
And
900s.
for 7 centuries, Islam holds most of what we call Spain today. And then in
That
the
means
16th century,
conquest.
they conquer Constantinople, and a couple of decades later, the world of Islam is prevented from dominating the Mediterranean only because the wind happens to favor the Venetian fleet at the Battle of Lepanto.
Yeah.
And then we have, as recently as 1683, Muslim armies lay siege to Vienna. That's the one that is so striking to me. 1683 is 20 years after, a little more than 20 years after the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth Rock.
Yeah.
And Islam is still attempting to invade Central Europe.
Yeah.
Stop him right there, please. So this is what we said last time. They were of conquest.
And he didn't say a country. It's Islam.
Islam.
Like it was
That's
the
right.
caliphate. It wasn't
Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia.
No.
it was the whole point of the religion is also a political destiny.
That's right. Exactly. Now, Dippin' Dots, perk up, little feller. I want you to notice that this very smart guy, I know he's white and he's Western, but the black lady, who's not white or Western, she seems to know the same fact. Maybe they read history books. Maybe not. Maybe they're making this stuff up just like I do. Anyway, keep it rolling. Let's hear what she says.
So the argument would run,
And don't forget India, don't forget this parts of Asia, don't forget Africa. Okay.
so all right, you not only grant the argument, you're heightening it, so to speak.
Yes, yes.
And the argument would run, thank you very much for attempting to reassure us, but truly we need to be wide awake. This really is a clash of civilizations, and there is something within Islam which has demonstrated for all 14 centuries an animus, an aggressiveness toward the West. The problem is Islam itself. How do you deal with that
The
argument?
problem is Islam itself.
I think again,
which
you
is
have
what
to
I
go
said.
to the political
He's copying
blueprints.
me.
If you take the American founding fathers, it's about 200 and something years old. It's a
It's been around
relatively
for a while.
young philosophy.
Oh, I see. Yep.
Yeah.
By comparison with Islam, it's young. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Even if you take classical liberalism, these are relatively young ideas. And then even younger, you get to communism and all the rest of it. So if you think of Islam as a political philosophy, it's really one of the oldest ideas, one of the oldest governing principles. It's not Western. It is not as organized, and it doesn't make logical sense to the Western mind, the Western mind of today. I think back then, if you read some of the works of, Gibbons and beyond that, they seemed to have understood what they were dealing with back then. But today, it seems to me that there are very few people in the West who really think that they understand the lairdness of Islam. That's why we need qualifiers like
said
radical and
layeredness.
extreme and fundamentalist. These are all words. This is a vocabulary that we use for Christianity and for Western phenomena that we then try to put on a different.
Okay, just stop her there for a second.
Yes, this is.
So, Will, she's talking about the definition of words. And she says when we say fundamentalist or radical or these sorts of things, that's how we think. And she's pointing out that the way we describe Muslims is itself a problem, right? That they think differently.
Yeah. And
The categories we think in.
And it has to do with your worldview. Like, so the West, whether you like to admit it or not, is just steeping in an ocean of Christian values
and thought,
and
really Protestant Christian
And so
thought.
when we say things like radical
Or fundamentalist.
we're kind of acknowledging that it's not true.
Or there's a Christian, that there's a Christian essence,
and it's outside of...
and you could stretch it.
Yeah.
Right? The Christian essence, whatever Jesus said, you could stretch it to radical, you could stretch it to fundamental, you could stretch it to liberal, right? You could stretch it to cultic or health wealth.
And you're almost implying that the actual Christian part that you're now modifying
The pure
with
seed.
an adjective is not this other thing.
That's it.
Is not this other thing.
Exactly.
You're saying, fundamentalist Christianity, you're differentiating it from Christianity.
It's not
You're
Christianity,
you're saying the nugget of Christianity is not the same as
Exactly.
fundamentalism. And then because we're swimming in this Christian world, we look over at Islam and say, well, we're giving it deference like it's a great world religion. And so we're
Yes.
trying to say that, well, surely what it's exemplifying its entire existence can't be part
Bad.
of the core of it. And so we're
I see what you're saying.
so we're adding the same qualifier. It's radical Islam, or it's extremist
Or fundamentalist.
Islam. Because we don't want to admit that
the problem
those aspects
is,
are actually in the core word that is Islam.
what you just said, it's essential if you're listening to understand that. It's what she said. We're repeating it so we get it. Because she's very smart, so she just has to say it once. We have to stop and think. And that's how you learn, by the way. So what she's saying is, if you think it's like Christianity, and the nugget's probably good, but the followers have messed it up in various ways, or stretched it or changed it. We think of that when George Bush comes out and says that Islam isn't the problem. The problem is Islamist extremists. That the nugget, the real Islam, if you get to it, is just a shining little happy philosophy. And what Ayaan Hirsi Ali is saying, no, it isn't. And what the white Westerner next to her is saying, hey, history tells us, I don't know, Dippy, what history books he reads, he's probably making it up, shows that between 600 and 700 and 700 and 800, it left the shores or the borders of Saudi Arabia and began invading and taking over other lands.
And killing everyone.
And killing or subjecting all the people there to their religion and letting them live if they would pay taxes, like we said before. That's what she's saying. So now let's pick up with her trying to describe Islam for what it is.
This is an old political philosophy. It's been around for a long time, and we don't understand it. Part of it is also we don't want to understand it. Why don't we want to understand it? I don't know the answer to that question, but again, let me speculate.
I love it.
If you get deep into the values and the principles that are promoted from within the political Islamic doctrine, and you put them next to our, Western political ideas,
Yes.
you get to a place of zero-sum games.
Either it's that or it's that. They are
yeah.
incompatible.
It becomes
no
binary.
society can be both.
Yeah, no society can be both. And the contemporary Western mind is taught to collaborate, to cooperate, to compromise,
Pluralism.
tolerance, all to me fantastic ideas and a fantastic attitude toward the world. But sometimes you get to a place where it is impossible to compromise. And I think deep down, the contemporary Western mind just, it's not that we don't get it, it's that when you get it, then what?
Stop right there. That was magic. That was beautiful. And it's worth rethinking. What she's saying is, if you can see Islam for what it is, you see it can't not aim for conquest. So I went to France one time, and that's enough. They didn't have the fries or the toast I was looking for. And in Paris, my wife and daughter got off the subway in the wrong spot. By wrong spot, I meant it was dominated by Muslims. And it's very dangerous to do that. Why? Not because the Muslims will kill each other, but they will take advantage of you if you're not. And nothing happened to my daughter and wife. They walked down the street as fast as they could and got to another block. They did have, one of them had her backpack slashed open with a knife and someone stole something out of it. But no one hurt them and they left and everything was fine. But Islam is not going away in France. It's not enculturating. It's not becoming part of the French culture because it doesn't want to become part of the French culture. It wants. We have in our country a representative in our house from Minnesota, from the Somali culture, and she's Islamic. And what is her name? That crazy woman? Does anyone know? Anyway, she, the Ilhan Omar.
Oh.
Yeah.
Her name was escaping me. I was thinking of
Don't worry
what's
about
the
it.
lady from Brooklyn.
No, that's AOC.
I was like,
I would have just said the scientist, AOC. No, Ilhan Omar, she comes right out and says to her Somali people, I am here not for America, but for the Somalis. She doesn't want to integrate. She doesn't want to become part of the American way of thinking. She wants to stay Islam, and they want Islam to spread out until it takes over America. And what Ali is saying is that is fundamental Islam. Well, that's just Islam. And it's not compatible, she says, with the Western mind. Because the Western mind thinks, well, if we're tolerant and we compromise, we can all get along. Can't we all get along? And she's saying, you're suckers. You can't get along with this. But then she says this. But once you realize that, and this is where we left off, what the heck are you supposed to do about it? And I think we're at a point where our silly little podcast gets attention from, I don't know who, because we're willing to say the obvious things that is not new in history. Islam doesn't play nice with others. It just never has.
with anybody else.
With anybody. And it's killing people in Nigeria like crazy. A lot of Christians. It is the problem in Israel is Islam, no question. And so we pointed out, and Ali is saying, the Western mind is not ready for that message because they have so much confirmation bias, so much belief that
everybody's good on the inside, and if we could just find common ground.
That's right. Buddhists and Hindus and Christians and Muslims could all live together in happiness with the LGBTQ, with the trans,
What's
with
this
child
idea
molesters.
that you have to respect everyone's culture?
Yes.
That cultures are somehow value neutral or morally neutral. So, you get trained all the time in the West that we have to respect, the foreigner's culture. Well, maybe, but some cultures are just objectively, in reality, to the one true God, better than others.
And in this case, it's not just better. I like the path you're on, but let's take it to where she's taking it. It's not a matter of a Hindu community has some advantages and a Christian one. Those actually could and do often exist next to each other. What it's saying, though, is Islam is incompatible.
Yeah,
it will try to crush what you have.
They're against one another. There's no
That's right.
compromise position.
But the Western mind is vulnerable because we just can't believe it. We just can't believe.
Well, we don't have a category for what to do about it.
And we don't believe it, and we don't have a category for what to do. Because what do you do? Say you can't come in if you're a Muslim. Well, we believe in freedom of religion. You can believe anything you want. You can believe Islam is true. But if you gather in your mosques and talk about jihad, what are we going to do about that? We don't know what to do about that. So most of us just stick our head in the sand and say it's not a thing. And that what we're doing now is a phobia, that we actually have a pathology of we're afraid of Islam. I'm not afraid of Muslims. And in the spiritual sense, I'm not afraid at all of Islam. I am afraid if somebody comes at me with a big knife yelling, Hassan, chop, and I'll run away or get a gun and shoot them. Anyway, go on.
Right. We don't want, all right, you made about 3 points that I want to follow up on. But first, you quote here in the Challenge of Dawa, and then you mentioned it again in your testimony before Congress. You quote Karl Popper. Karl Popper is middle 20th century philosopher, the man, a great defender of what he termed the open society. There's Popper, Hayek, a number of others. And Popper's this tremendously important intellectual figure for defending the West as it had evolved by the middle of the last century.
Yeah.
And Karl Popper believes in tolerance up to a point.
Yes.
Let me quote him. This is a passage that you footnoted, so I looked up the passage. He's writing in 1945, and clearly he has in mind fascism and communism. But here's what Popper writes. As long as we, Westerners, as long as we can counter intolerant philosophies by rational argument and keep them in check by public opinion, suppression would certainly be unwise. But we should claim the right to suppress them if necessary, even by force.
Yeah.
We should claim that any movement preaching intolerance places itself outside the law, and we should consider incitement to intolerance and persecution as criminal, in the same way as we should consider incitement to murder or kidnapping or to the revival of the slave trade as criminal. Close quote. So here you have this paradox that in order to sustain a tolerant society, you need to draw very sharp lines around it and say this inside, as much tolerance as we can manage, but there are lines, and outside we claim the right to suppress the intolerant. Now, that is extremely strong language. And there were people even at the time who thought that was going a little far toward communism, for example. Do you want to amend this language in any way as a statement of principle for the way we ought to deal with Islam? Because the tightness of religious belief and political theory, it's so closely intertwined with a fundamental outlook on man's relation to God. Do you want to amend? Do you want to soften it? Or do you want to let Popper stand as a kind of guiding principle for us?
I would like to let Popper stand. And again, I'm glad you mentioned 1945, 1947. We're just coming out of the Second World War.
Yes.
In the West, we've just been confronted with an ideology that was impossible to compromise with.
Yes.
And if you remember the early days, the conversations between Chamberlain and Churchill, Chamberlain thought that he could talk some sense into Hitler.
Yes.
He thought he could negotiate. He thought
peace in our time.
Peace in our time.
Well, and actually, she's talking about Nazism, but it's going to become communism.
That was the softening of the language. That was the softening of the attitude toward. You see this evil. You really think it just can't be true. This man must want something other than just go down a path that could possibly destroy all of us.
And this is part of the pattern that I take it as you identify.
Yeah.
Even as in those days, confronting Hitler, Chamberlain, the people the appeasement crowd, they thought, oh yes, he talks that way, but he doesn't really believe it.
Yeah.
Likewise, during the Cold War, much of the left said, oh, no, that the communist stuff, that's just rhetoric.
Yeah.
Actually, they're just a great power. They want their own sphere of influence. They want a little economic growth.
Yeah.
They don't really believe it.
Yeah.
And you argue that we're making much the same mistake, that the radical Islamists, those who propose the political Islam, don't
Radical
they really
Islamists.
believe it.
They really believe it, and here they demonstrate it. They teach their children. They sacrifice the lives of their children. What is more valuable to one than their own children? So they sacrifice the lives and the futures of their own children. They sacrifice their own careers. There are men, the big famous example is Bin Laden, but he's not the only one, who were born into privilege, financial privilege, in that context, clan and tribal privilege. Their families are well respected and honored. They're princes. And they set all that aside. They go to some hellhole in Afghanistan, and they start promoting these ideas with absolutely everything that they have, everything in them. I can't think of a better illustration, a better demonstration of conviction than that kind of conviction. And it trickles down. It trickles down to the man who takes a van after he's thought all things through to run people over, knowing he's going to kill these people, but that he runs the risk of being shot by the police. That is a clear demonstration of conviction.
It sure is.
If
I
you
walked
want
on
to
that
take
sidewalk.
some of the, I don't know if you
After.
follow some of what goes on in the Palestinian territory, but some of these people who kill and die while killing others, those who die as they're considered to be martyrs, you have streets and squares named after them. They are seen within the community of radical Muslims as heroes. They're celebrated. They're celebrated more than we celebrate the Founding Fathers, more than we celebrate any of our Western heroes. And what other demonstration do you want of conviction than that?
Right.
We can go on and say they're mad and, they're deprived, they're this, they're that. Deprivation plays a role, but it is not the cause. And sometimes I would say, I think to me and to you probably, it's madness to take your life. It's madness to
Right.
take other people's lives. But
There's something weirdly appealing about it.
Yeah.
The conviction, the force of conviction.
Yeah.
Well, this is my speculation. You know the answer to this. My speculation. Why do we see radicalization of Muslims in the suburbs of Paris?
Yeah.
Well, here's the question. Why is it that young men, overwhelmingly men,
Yeah.
in the last year or 2 years left countries in the West, including a few from this country, but many from France, many from Germany, some from Britain, to go fight with ISIS,
Yeah.
who were clearly leading. These are not people who were showering. They were at risk. They were dangerous. They were.
Yeah.
But there's something about the purity of conviction that just
Yeah.
does exercise an appeal. We are built to respond to belief.
To belief, yeah,
All
to
right.
something higher than yourself. And Karl Popper describes in The Open Society and Its Enemies, he describes that, in his criticism of Popper, in his criticism of Hegel, he describes how this transcendence of, the human being subjected to being an instrument in this higher goal.
Right.
Islam does that, but even better, because it's to God. It's a religious, you see, Plato's argument, Hegel's arguments were all secular, they were man-made.
Right.
Those who were convinced to go on that path they had to be persuaded, but here it's the ultimate power. It's
Right.
God.
Right.
Yeah.
The challenge of dawah.
Yeah, and I criticize Popper for skipping Muhammad. He goes from Plato to Hegel, and in between, he forgets Muhammad. And I think to a certain degree, my criticism is it's so, a lot of people say some of these thinkers, everything about them is centered in the West.
Yes.
So here's a critique of, having ignored what's going on in other civilizations, in this case, in the Islamic civilization.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, let's give it a stop. We could go on because I'm going to enjoy it, but not everyone will enjoy it as much as me. But and this will be we can end the show here, and I know we got another video. We'll take it up next time. But I do want to say to summarize, she's pointing out that an open society has to draw a line somewhere, and we do draw those lines. We don't allow slavery. If you had a religion that said slavery was good, we will say, no, you can't actually take slaves. What she is saying is that Islam is just as dangerous as that. But it comes in a package that we look at it and we go, huh. Like in one of my favorite movies. You had, maybe we'll show that another time, this one. Maybe I could find it too. Why don't you talk about this a minute? We can end on a video. Go ahead. Go ahead. What are your thoughts on this?
What are my thoughts on this?
That's what I asked you.
Yeah.
Or were you not paying attention either? Just
No,
Just
I
kidding.
had thoughts. My thoughts were kind of. She was talking about them being celebrated more than the founders, than we celebrate the founders here, and then we were talking about, freedom of the exercise of religion as established, and then in order to have a tolerant society, drawing bright boundaries, bright lines of what that means. I think that's one of the greatest confusions we have in our society is the difference between liberty and libertine. Like we were never like the Libertarian Party. Like the United States, the idea that founded the United States of America was never about unbridled do what you want as long as it doesn't affect other people. I mean, it's never what it was. At the time, it's like reading the Bible, right? It's who's the original author? What's the original author's intent as read by the people he was originally writing to? Like, it was freedom to pursue virtue. Like, you wanted to be able to own property.
Let's go. Wait, you said, and I'm going to agree with this, but I think this makes the point that the founding fathers of the United States created this open and pluralistic society that Ali is saying is a problem. And it's not a problem, the society, but that we have a danger, we have a vulnerability, so that we were free to practice virtuous lives. So here's the issue: is who defines what virtue is?
Well, right, and that's
for them, for the founding fathers.
Right, and
who did? I'm asking you the question.
God.
Right. They took a Judeo-Christian that courage is good, cowardice is bad, cruelty is bad.
They didn't have this problem that we have now of subjectivism, of saying like, well, who's to say that you shouldn't do this because it's bad? Like,
right.
Who's to say? Like this idea, like I'll take something that's not Islamic related at all, but this idea, like the founders would just find it laughable that anyone would say, well, you can't make porn illegal because it's a free society. They would say no, like that's bad, and we obviously can say things that are bad or illegal. Well, who's to say that it's bad or not?
And on top of that, they saw that if it was bad for society, and that's where the libertarian blows it. He doesn't care what society looks like.
Or they might even say it's bad for your soul, and we're not going to let you do it.
Well, but I also think though they saw there was a connection to other people.
Yeah,
if you start to have a bunch of people living like this, what happens to your society? And I think the libertarian misses that. He believes there's some kind of, it's the same vulnerability. He thinks openness will solve everything. So this vulnerability, I got a movie clip for you from my favorite movie of all time. And in this scene, we've got two of our friends, and they think that Pete, this one's Pete right here, the one on the end. They think Pete was turned into a frog by these sirens, these pretty girls they meet in a stream. Don't ask how. And they think he turned them into a toad, but he didn't. So they got him in a box, but they also have a lot of money from robbing a bank with Pretty Boy Floyd. But Pretty Boy Floyd's out of the picture. So there's this guy who's a Bible salesman who takes them on a picnic, and his plan is to rob them. And they're so stupid they don't see it coming, because he comes as a friendly person, he comes as a talker, he's like one of them. So they don't see, and as you watch the movie, you know they're so stupid that it's obvious he's a charlatan, but they're too dumb to see it. This is what Ali is saying about us in America. She's saying, you guys don't realize it, but Islam as it is something you do not want to welcome in.
Well, and they're it's not even that they're shrewd enough to weaponize your own inability to say right and wrong against you. Like, okay, well then we'll just come and we'll start getting representation here, and we'll
what do we got to do?
Over.
We'll all live in one place and get and where else do you go? To Minnesota nice, where they're too nice. As Garrison Keillor said, you could serve Minnesota people if they visit New York. You could serve them roadkill, and they'd be too polite to tell you that it's roadkill. And among themselves, they'd complain. But when the waiter come, no, it's very good. It's a little rancid. I like a little less rancid, but it's not bad. Yeah. And they're in Minnesota and in Dearborn, Michigan, where a lot of nice people live, overpopulating the place so they can get representatives like Ilhan Omar and some of the others into the Congress so they can rule.
Yep.
And they want Sharia law. It's not good. Dippin' Dots, I'm sorry, you're just wrong again. So let's show this movie to show how silly we are, how silly George Bush was when he said it's terror, it's not Islam. It is Islam, George Bush. It is Islam. And this movie shows that George Bush is the guy who, Big Dan T is Islam. And George Bush is the other two guys, or liberals are the other two guys. Hit it whenever you're ready. There he is. Look. He wants that money. He thinks he's got him a butterfly. I like that guy.
Thank you, boys, for throwing in that fricassee. I'm a man of large appetites, and even with lunch under my belt, I was feeling mighty peckish.
It's our pleasure, Big Dan.
Thank you as well for the conversational hiatus. I generally refrain from speech during gustation. There are those who attempt both at the same time. I find it coarse and vulgar. Where were we?
Making money in the Lord's service.
You don't say much, friend, but when you do, it's to the point, and I salute you for it. Yes, Bible sales. Now, the trade is not a complicated one. There are but two things to learn. One being where to find a wholesaler. The word of God in bulk, as it were. Two, how to recognize your customer. Who are you dealing with? It's an exercise in psychology, so to speak. And it is that which I propose to give you a lesson in right now.
Well, I like to think I'm a pretty astute observer of the human scene, too, Big Dan.
No doubt, brother. I figured as much back at the restaurant. That's why I invited y'all out here for this advanced tutorial.
What's going on, Big Dan?
It's all about the money,
There's
boys.
George Bush after
That's
9/11.
it.
What's going on, Big Dan?
Don't break.
I don't get it, Big Dan.
Take that, George Bush.
Just take your show cards. And whatever you got in the hole.
He thinks that's money, but it's not. It's Pete. Well, it's not really Pete. It's a frog.
That ain't nothing but a damn toad.
No, you don't understand. That's Pete. Pete.
You know these things give you warts? The end of the lesson.
See you in the funny pages, boys. So that's America. I don't understand, Big Dan. Going, they're coming telling us we got Sharia law, we're going to take over. And we got our idiot finest students in Colombia marching for the Palestinian cause, not realizing they're so dumb. They're just like George Clooney. And George Clooney apparently is very dumb. Our Ivy League students are as dumb as George Clooney. Think about that. It's all about context. And they're about to get whacked by Big Dan T right there. Unless, doggone it, Americans wake up and have the guts to say, Muslims are great. We love them. There's many great things about Muslims in their culture, but Islam is a disease on our planet. And that's it. We're going to drop the mic, but we don't do that because they cost too much. We're done.